But speaking of trending down, that was the topic of Paul Padudi's latest piece over at dailyfaceoff.com. And the one headline name that got everybody buzzing, and we'll talk about JT Miller and Philip Forsberg and Jordan Binnington, but Paul includes Connor McDavid in the conversation. And I think as a headliner, a lot of people kind of said, like, what the hell are you talking about? This is a guy who is thoroughly in the mix for the scoring race, is probably going to be a finalist for the Hart Trophy again. But when you dig into the numbers, it's just important to remember Paul's doing this all relative to who Connor McDavid has been in the past and who he is right now. And when you look at it through that lens, like, this is a guy who's 2 years removed from a 153-point season. And Hutz, as much as Connor McDavid at his, and I almost shudder even saying this, but Connor McDavid at his worst is a weird way to put it, he's still better than 99% of the league. But the numbers here speak for themselves. Like, his 5-on-5 production, his production in general, is the lowest it's been in his career.
Now I circle back to my self-preservation point. This is a guy that learned from experience too, right? I think like waiting in the weeds a little bit, managing your body, trying to set yourself up for playoff success. And these last 2 years, he's played a ton of hockey. That's going to the Stanley Cup final, winning a Conn Smythe, then the next season playing that, and then having the Four Nations Cup where he puts Canada on his back, and then going back to a Stanley Cup final. So yes, I do agree with, the numbers dropping. They don't lie in that sense, but I don't think this is a big concern. I think this is a maturity factor of understanding that, like, yes, I can go out and push and try to win the Hart every year and get all these singular accolades, which at the end of the day, he's talked about winning as number one. I think you're just seeing the maturity and the growth of him being like, I'm going to set myself up for success. And yes, it doesn't look great right now because of, where they're at with the Edmonton Oilers. But that being said, there is a strategic advantage. I think you look at Florida Panthers, what they've done the last few years, kind of limping into the playoffs and then making their noise when it matters most.
Yeah, the one thing with McDavid, and again, like he's going to finish north of 100 points this year. He's probably going to be a 40-goal guy this season, and he's starting to heat up. But when in Pat, if you can pull up the numbers from Padudi again that show his shots on goal, like that's the one that really stands out to me. And I think a lot of Oilers fans know this as well. Like when Connor McDavid shoots the puck, offense is created, and not necessarily just always in his goal scoring, but it forces teams to respect his shot a little bit more. It creates other avenues for him to produce. So you go through, like, this year, his shots per 60 at 5-on-5, 6.94. Last year, 7.3. Year before that, 8.5. The 2 years before that, both north of 9. And then you look at him turning on the Jets, at least production wise, in the last few games. He's got 8 points in his last 3 games. 7 shots, 5 shots, 6 shots. On a per 60 basis, those are the 3 highest volume shot games of the season for McDavid. And he's got 8 points. Like, I really do think sometimes for McDavid, not that he's bored or anything like that. Like, again, that's a weird way to kind of frame it considering he's in the NHL. But like, sometimes I feel like he's just in pass mode and he needs to get into that selfish, like, oh, it's okay for me to just rip 7 pucks tonight because I'm going to be in 7 great opportunities to score.
Yeah, and I think it's the opposite side too at times when they play with Connor McDavid too. It feels like I've seen this a lot throughout the NHL where a guy gets put on lines, and right now when you're not really finding your rhythm and you're not winning hockey games consistently, you're kind of bouncing guys around trying to see what patterns work, where when you have superstars on your team, you're almost trying to feed them more and force plays, where I think with McDavid, that's kind of a similar fact, right? He is a guy that can just turn a game on its ear at any point, and he's trying to feed other guys. He's trying to find chemistry. He's trying to get it going, where at times less is more. And I think for the Edmonton Oilers, he's still in that superstar status. And I think when you look at that graph that Padudi had, it's going to work its way back up, right? It's just a matter of time. I think this is a feeling out process. And I know, like, I see someone in the chat talking about too much hockey. Too much hockey is a real thing. Like, I don't care what you say. There is a factor that, like, there is a lot that weighs into this. And this is also a guy that has the weight of the Olympics coming as well. And I think being strategic and setting yourself up for the war of attrition that's coming come playoff time it's going to be important for the Edmonton Oilers.
I like, again, use the word weight, and we'll close off the McDavid part of this, I guess, on this point of, like, this little uptick in his production the last few games lines up with him getting to play with Nugent Hopkins and Hyman again. Whereas early in the year, it was Savoy and it was all these Frederick and it was all these different pieces. And I think McDavid carries some of the weight of, like, okay, I have someone on my line who I need to try get going a little bit. And I think that leads to the overpassing and all that. Now that he's back comfortable with Nugent Hyman, I think he knows like, hey, those guys are going to get theirs. They're going to produce. And also they're not going to feel like I'm holding on to the puck too much if I'm ripping off 5-6 shots a game. So I do think the line mate part of it is important with the McDavid thing too.
Yeah, I agree. Again, there is familiarity with these guys and where they're at. But that being said, it's just going to get in the rhythm. And I think the bigger problem is McDavid's lack of that. It's the defending and just predictability in their game where they need to find to push this team back into where they need to be.
All right, let's talk about some of the other players that were in Paul's list here. JT Miller, Jordan Binnington, Philip Forsberg, all in the conversation as well. But I want to start with Miller because I think he's the one, at least out of the forwards, where the concerns may be a bit more legit. And I like this is more just like a me personal thing, but like I'm always wary of the guys who are late bloomers to the offensive production side, because then I feel like the peak comes and then you shoot down from the peak just as fast as you got there. And Miller's a guy who it took him until his, 5th or 6th year in the league to finally have his first point per game season. And then he explodes in Vancouver. It's 90s, it's hundreds. And now again, he's a fine player, but this drop off has been harsh. He's got 4 more years at $8 million. And like, if the Rangers acquired him to not only be the, that leader off the ice and in the locker room, but if they acquired him to be a guy who can drive the offense for them, I think they're going to be disappointed over the next couple of years. I don't know if his trend ever fully ticks back up.
No, I agree too. And again, this is a guy that the other thing that I take into like account here when I'm talking about JT Miller is he kind of thrives off that physical play, right? And he's on the backside of it now, right? That's the other factor that comes into play is like the style of play that makes you successful at 32 is not the same style of play that's successful when he was 27, when he was 26, 28. Like that's a big difference in age and just durability to sustain the way that he needs to play. So I think that has to come into account. A guy that plays with a chip on his shoulder and he generates a lot of plays with his physicality. So it's going to be wear and tear. And I think he still is a good player. I think he still is productive, but to start thinking that we're going to get that JT Millers of the past, putting up 32, 37 and over 100 points in 23, 24. I just don't see that happening anymore. So I understand the curve is dropping down. I think it's just more of what he lacks in the execution. It's really going to be hard to make up with his physical play.
The next guy, Philip Forsberg, and I think we're going to both agree on this one because we both really like the player. I think the Philip Forsberg trend ticks right back up the second that you put him on a quality team with a skilled centerman on a power play where he's not as alone, we can call it. Like this drop off is incredibly harsh, but if he gets traded somewhere else this summer, I would bet a lot of my own money on him being back north of 90 points next season in a new situation.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, now if you are looking at the lineup chart through the Nashville Predators, so you're going into a scouting report, right? And this is what goes on in the NHL locker room, right? You're sitting at a scouting report and you're like, Forsberg's playing on the wing between Haula and Marchessault, right? Ryan O'Reilly can't skate like he used to. Stamkos can't skate like he used to. Luka Langeliska's on your top line. Like, okay, so those are good players. So who are you focusing on? Where's your best matchup? Where are your best players being focused? It's on Philip Forsberg because there's no one really to deflect. When you look at a lot of other teams that have other options and other skill guys where they can hurt you, you look at their bottom six, no one's really going to hurt you. So all the focus is on Philip Forsberg. So think about the matchups that he's getting every single night. And I think that comes into account as you think about a weaker team. If you put him in a situation where there's a little more star power and you can spread him out a bit, what I'd like to watch now with Philip Forsberg is at the Olympics. When he goes to Team Sweden, right, when there is other superstars with him, watch him flourish, watch him do well, because he has a lot of talent. And again, he's a guy that can play physical. He can beat you offensively. He is a Swiss Army knife when it comes to his capability on the rink.
Yeah, again, maybe we'll start like a hashtag free Philip. Get Philip to a contender next season. But that's something for us to work on maybe over the summer. The last name on here, and we can be really quick with this, but Jordan Binnington was included from a goaltending perspective, Huts. And sometimes I like to sit there and think, what if Austin Matthews would have just scored that goal in overtime of the Four Nations faceoff and Binnington didn't make that glove save? And I know he made a bunch of other saves and he played good, but like if Canada doesn't win that Four Nations, I think the conversation around this guy in Binnington is vastly, wildly different.
Yeah, and it's so fragile, right? You look at that. And I used to always think about this when we played, like we'd lose a game 3-2 and there's like one little play in a game that like changed it and you lose. Next thing you know, your meeting the next day is like, hey, this team sucks. You're not getting it done. Where you get a save here or there, a certain play, a bounce your way, you end up winning. I think Jordan Binnington may be one of the better goalies when it comes to being insulated, right? Timely saves, good decor. And again, you look back to his Stanley Cup run, he wasn't necessarily great at times. It was like Jekyll and Hyde. He was either really good or really bad in some of those series when he went on to win the Cup. That was with one of the best decors we've seen in years. So I do think between the ears, he is valuable and he can make a lot of saves. But that being said, I don't know if he's like, maybe he gets game one just based on, you know, the rapport he has with the team in his past. But that being said, his better days are behind him.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned like that Cup run year. Everyone loves to jump. Oh, he's a clutch goalie. That was in 2019. That was, I mean, we're getting close to 7 years ago. And after that Cup run, he went on to lose his next 9 playoff games. I just think sometimes the clutch goalie thing gets a little bit overblown, but I digress. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.